This is my true story. For years, every Sunday morning, my wife cleaned the guest room. She said it was her alone time. I never questioned it. We'd been married 22 years, and routine was part of life. She'd hum old songs while I watched football and thought nothing of it. But one Sunday, she left her phone at home. A message appeared that didn't make sense. My gut twisted, and I decided to check that room for the first time in years. What I found inside destroyed everything I believed about marriage. Before I tell you, comment where you're watching from, and please subscribe. Every Sunday followed the same pattern, almost down to the minute. She'd wake up before me, make coffee, then head upstairs to clean the guest room. It started about 3 years ago. Back then, I didn't think twice about it. Everyone has their habits. For her, it was cleaning. For me, it was sitting on the couch watching the Packers and pretending to understand the plays. We lived in a quiet 2-story house in Kansas, on a street where nothing dramatic ever happened. The kind of neighborhood where people wave when they mow their lawns and borrow sugar instead of gossip. Our life looked calm from the outside, steady, ordinary, predictable. She always said cleaning relaxed her. "It clears my head," she used to tell me. So every Sunday after breakfast, she'd grab her basket of cleaning supplies, sprays, gloves, vacuum, and disappear upstairs. She'd hum while she worked, a faint tune that drifted down through the air vents. Sometimes I'd hear the vacuum running for an hour straight. It sounded like any other household chore, like any other normal day. There was never a reason to think anything was strange. The guest room wasn't used much. Our kids were grown and gone, and we rarely had visitors. Once a year, her sister would stay over during the holidays, but that was it. So when she said she wanted to keep it fresh, I figured she just liked things neat. That was her way. Everything had to be spotless. Even the smallest mess made her restless. She'd polish silverware that hadn't been used in months and rearrange furniture no one sat on. It wasn't unusual, just part of who she was. While she cleaned, I had my own routine. I'd turn on the TV, pour a second cup of coffee, and let the day roll by. Sunday mornings were peaceful. The kind of peace you don't question. Sometimes I'd go outside and water the plants or read the newspaper on the porch. She'd come down an hour or two later, smelling like lemon cleaner, smiling like she'd just done something meaningful. I always told her the house looked great. She'd nod and say, "It's good to keep things tidy." I never thought there was anything more to it. Over time, her Sunday cleaning became as natural as breathing. It wasn't something I noticed anymore. Just part of the rhythm of our marriage. If she skipped a week, I probably would have thought something was wrong. That's how habits work. They become invisible once they settle in. But looking back now, I realize she never let me inside that room. Not once. If I walked upstairs while she was there, she'd say, "Don't come in, it's dusty." She always said it kindly, with a laugh, like she was looking out for me. And I believed her. I never had a reason not to. After all, who questions their spouse about cleaning a room? It sounded silly even thinking about it. There were little things, though. Things that didn't make sense at the time but stood out later. Like how she'd always lock the guest room door when she finished. I assumed she didn't want the cats going in. Or how she'd change the air freshener every week, even when it didn't need replacing. Once, I found a receipt for a new bedsheet set I'd never seen used. She said it was a backup for guests. Another time, she asked me to help carry boxes upstairs, but when I offered, she insisted she'd do it herself. I didn't think much of it. I trusted her. Trust is a quiet thing. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand proof. It just sits there, assuming everything is fine. That's how I lived. Assuming. Every Sunday, I heard her footsteps go up the stairs. The vacuum hummed to life. The faint sound of her humming through the ceiling. And every Sunday, I sat in the living room, comfortable, clueless, and certain that my marriage was built on honesty. It took one forgotten phone, one unread message, and one hidden camera to prove how wrong I was. But on those early Sundays, the peaceful ones, I didn't know any better. I thought the woman I shared breakfast with was simply cleaning a room. I didn't realize she was also cleaning her tracks. The longer it went on, the more normal it felt. That's the thing about habits. They sneak into your life until you stop noticing them. Every Sunday, like clockwork, she carried her cleaning supplies up the stairs. The sound of the vacuum became part of the house's rhythm, as ordinary as the ticking of a wall clock. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of her walking past the hallway, her hair tied back, wearing gloves, a rag tucked into her pocket. She looked busy, focused. I never questioned it. Why would I? A clean house was something to be grateful for, not suspicious of. She'd close the guest room door behind her every time. That was one thing I started noticing after a while. The door always stayed shut. Even when she was done cleaning, it remained closed, like the room didn't belong to us anymore. I remember once trying to open it after she finished, just to grab an old box of photo albums I'd stored there. It was locked. She told me later she didn't want dust to spread into the hallway. I believed her. She said it so calmly, so casually, that it didn't sound like a lie. Every Sunday followed the same pattern. She'd spend 2, sometimes 3 hours up there. The rest of the week, she never mentioned the room, never went near it. Only on Sundays did it matter. I'd hear furniture scraping across the floor, drawers opening, sometimes even muffled voices. But I always told myself it was the TV or the neighbors outside. It's amazing how easily the mind fills in blanks when it doesn't want to see the truth. I started noticing how protective she was about that space. If I mentioned the guest room, even as a joke, she'd brush it off. "You never liked that room anyway," she'd say with a laugh. Or, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." I didn't think it was strange at first, but later I realized how many small moments like that piled up. She'd stop me from carrying up boxes. She'd change the bed sheets by herself. She'd even vacuum when I wasn't home sometimes. Looking back, every act of cleaning was really just a cover, but at the time, it looked like care. There were other signs I ignored. She started buying new cleaning supplies more often than usual. Bottles of disinfectant, paper towels, air fresheners, even spare batteries for something I didn't recognize. Once, I saw her carrying a small black device upstairs. I asked what it was, and she said it was an air purifier. I didn't argue. It wasn't in my nature to pry. After 20 years of marriage, you learn to give space. You trust that your partner's small secrets are harmless. She'd come downstairs after those long hours, hair a little messy, cheeks flushed, and I'd ask if she was tired. She'd smile, pour herself a glass of water and say, "It's worth it." "The room feels better now," I'd nod, pretending to understand what that meant. I figured she was just keeping herself busy. People find purpose in odd things when life gets quiet. We were both older, the kids gone, the house too big for two. Her cleaning, I thought, was just a way to fill the silence. Sometimes, though, I'd catch a strange look in her eyes when she came down. Not guilt, not sadness, but something distant, like her mind was still upstairs. I'd notice little things off after that. The faint smell of men's cologne in the hallway, the creak of the guest room floorboards late at night when she said she couldn't sleep. I'd hear the faint click of the lock turning when she came back to bed. I told myself I was imagining it. Because that's what you do when you're afraid to know. The truth is, I didn't want to face the idea that something could be wrong. I thought ignoring it was safer. The mind protects itself that way. It hides the truth under layers of routine. So I convinced myself that everything was fine, that the locked door, the long hours, the extra supplies, all of it was harmless. I told myself I was lucky to have a wife who cared so much about keeping things in order. But that order was built on lies. I see that now. I had been living next to a mystery every Sunday for 3 years, and I was too blind to see it. The day I finally opened that door, I realized that silence isn't peace. It's a warning you don't hear until it's too late. That Sunday started like any other. The coffee pot gurgled, the morning news played softly on the TV, and she moved through the kitchen like she always did. Calm, quiet, methodical. But something about her felt off that morning. She was dressed earlier than usual, wearing makeup and a blouse I hadn't seen in a long time. I asked if we were going somewhere later, and she said she had errands after cleaning. That wasn't new either, but her tone was distracted, her eyes distant. She kept checking the clock. Usually she didn't rush on Sundays, but this time she seemed to be waiting for something. She left her phone on the counter while pouring her coffee. I didn't think much of it until I heard it buzz. Once, then twice. The sound didn't stop. I glanced over, expecting to see a message from her sister or one of the kids. But the name on the screen wasn't familiar, just a number with no name saved. The message said, "See you at 10. Simple, casual, but my chest tightened instantly. 10 o'clock. She always started cleaning around 10. For a second, I told myself it must be harmless, maybe someone from church or her book club. But the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. Something about that message didn't fit the routine I thought I knew so well. When I asked who had texted her, she smiled quickly, said it was one of the ladies from the volunteer group. I wanted to believe her, but something about the way she grabbed her phone a little too fast made my stomach twist. She looked nervous, not guilty, just careful, like someone who didn't want questions. Around 9:30, she started gathering her usual supplies. Vacuum, sprays, gloves, everything looked the same as always. But she added something new this time, a folded towel and a small bag. I asked what the bag was for, and she said it was for extra cleaning rags. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly when she zipped it. Then she smiled again, the kind of smile that looks like a door closing. I watched her go upstairs, listened to the familiar hum of the vacuum start a few minutes later. Normally, that sound calmed me. That day, it didn't. Every vibration from the ceiling felt heavier. I tried to watch TV, but I couldn't focus. I kept looking at the clock. The text message repeated in my mind like a drum. "See you at 10. At 10:15, I heard footsteps upstairs. Not hers. They were heavier, slower, deliberate. Then silence. I muted the TV and waited, listening. A minute later, the vacuum started again, then stopped, then started. The pattern was strange, uneven. It didn't sound like cleaning anymore. My heartbeat matched the rhythm of that vacuum, fast, uncertain, anxious. I wanted to go up there, but something held me back. Maybe fear. Maybe denial. It's strange how people can sense when something's wrong but still choose to stay seated. She came downstairs around noon, same as always, wiping her hands with a towel. Her hair looked slightly different, not messy, just softer, like she'd fixed it. She smiled and asked if I wanted lunch. I nodded, pretending everything was fine. She looked perfectly normal, maybe too normal. Her voice was calm, her movements steady, her eyes kind. That's the thing about betrayal. It hides in plain sight, behind small smiles and everyday gestures. When she left later that afternoon for groceries, I noticed she had changed clothes again. She didn't look like someone running errands. She looked like someone meeting someone. I tried to shake the thought away, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I stood in the kitchen long after she drove off, staring at the spot where her phone had buzzed earlier. Something in me shifted that day. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious. That quiet, dangerous kind of curiosity that grows when you finally start seeing what's been there all along. By the time she came back that evening, the unease had settled deep inside me. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded, smiled, and helped carry in the groceries. But that night, while she slept soundly beside me, I made a decision. The next Sunday, I wasn't going to sit downstairs anymore. I was going to find out what she was really cleaning in that room. The next Sunday, I woke up before her for the first time in years. I sat in the kitchen with my coffee, waiting. The clock ticked louder than usual. I watched her come down the stairs, dressed neatly as always, her basket of supplies already in hand. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and said she'd be upstairs for a while. I smiled back and said nothing. I didn't turn on the TV this time. I just listened, every step, every sound, every hum of that vacuum cleaner. I memorized the rhythm of it. Around 10 o'clock, the vacuum stopped. Then there was silence. I waited another 10 minutes, pretending to read the paper. Then I heard faint footsteps again. 2 sets, not one. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. A few minutes later, her car keys jingled and she called down, saying she was heading to the grocery store. That was her routine. Clean first, shop later. I told her I'd stay home. She left without another word. The door shut, the car engine started, and for the first time in 3 years, I climbed those stairs while she was gone. The guest room door wasn't locked. That alone was strange. She always locked it when she finished. The moment I opened it, the smell hit me. Not dust, not cleaner, but perfume. Strong, sweet, and fresh, like she'd sprayed it moments before leaving. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting streaks of sunlight cut through the room. Everything looked too perfect. Bed made tightly, pillows arranged neatly, not a speck of dust anywhere. But the air felt wrong. The kind of wrong that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. I walked slowly around the room. Her cleaning supplies were still on the floor, open and half-used. I noticed a small alarm clock on the dresser, new, digital, blinking red. We hadn't bought anything new for that room in years. The light blinked too fast, steady and sharp, like something recording. I stepped closer. It wasn't an alarm clock. It was a camera, a hidden one. For a moment, I just stared at it, not understanding what I was seeing. I picked it up, turned it around, and there it was, a small slot on the back with a memory card inside. My stomach dropped. I felt sick. My hands started shaking. I didn't know whether to feel angry, betrayed, or terrified. Why would she hide a camera in the guest room? Was she filming something, someone, me? None of it made sense. I checked the rest of the room. Under the bed, clean. Inside the closet, empty, except for a folded blanket. The dresser drawers, organized but untouched. Everything was spotless, unnaturally so, like it was prepared for something, not cleaned from something. I stood there, holding that fake clock, trying to convince myself that there was some innocent reason for it. Maybe it was for safety, I told myself. Maybe she was worried about break-ins. Maybe she didn't tell me because she knew I'd overreact. But deep down, I already knew those weren't the answers. I put the camera in my pocket and left the room, closing the door quietly behind me. My chest was pounding so hard it hurt. I went downstairs, sat at the table, and placed the clock in front of me. The red light was still blinking. I unplugged it, pulled out the memory card, and stared at it. It was small, barely the size of my fingernail, but it felt heavier than anything I'd ever held. That little piece of plastic was the truth, and I wasn't sure I wanted to see it. For the next half hour, I just sat there, running through every memory in my head. Every Sunday, every smile, every excuse about cleaning or grocery shopping. Suddenly, all of it felt like part of a script she had rehearsed for years. I thought about that text message, "See you at 10. I thought about the perfume, the locked doors, the air fresheners. Everything connected. Everything made sense now, just not in a way I wanted it to. I finally opened my old laptop, slid the card into the slot, and took a deep breath. My finger hovered over the mouse for a few seconds before I clicked the first file. Whatever was on that screen was going to change everything. And deep down, I already knew there was no going back. When the first video opened, I didn't breathe for a full minute. The footage was clear, steady, and quiet. It showed the guest room from the corner angle, the same one where I'd found the fake clock. The bed sat perfectly made, sunlight coming through the curtains, everything calm. Too calm. Then, after about 30 seconds, she walked in. My wife. The woman I had breakfast with that morning. The woman who said she was cleaning. She didn't have cleaning supplies in her hands this time, just her phone. She sat on the bed, fixed her hair, and looked at the camera like she knew exactly where it was. For a few minutes, she just sat there scrolling, like she was waiting. Then there was a knock, soft, controlled. She stood up quickly and went to the door. The sound of it opening made my stomach twist. A man stepped inside. I didn't recognize him at first. He looked familiar but out of place. When he turned his head toward the camera, my heart stopped. He was the deputy from the local sheriff's office, the same man who'd helped us file our car registration a few months ago, the one she'd said was so helpful with paperwork. The video played on, they talked, but there was no audio. I couldn't hear what was said, only see the way she smiled, the way he laughed, the way she touched his arm. There was nothing subtle about it. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it wasn't a setup. It was betrayal, plain as day, happening in my own house, in the same room she cleaned every Sunday. My hands started shaking so hard I had to grip the edge of the table just to steady myself. I wanted to stop watching, but I couldn't. My eyes stayed glued to the screen like I was watching someone else's life collapse in front of me. They sat together on the bed for a while. She leaned on his shoulder. They talked, laughed again, and then she kissed him. That was the moment everything inside me went cold. I paused the video and just stared at the screen. It didn't look real. It looked like some cruel prank, like a scene from a show that couldn't possibly belong to my life. I closed the laptop, stood up, and paced around the kitchen. I couldn't think. I couldn't feel. All I could see was that image burned into my head. Her smile, his hand on her back, the two of them in that room I'd never been allowed to enter. After a few minutes, I sat back down and opened the laptop again. There were more files, dozens of them, each labeled by date. I clicked another one. Same thing. Different day, different clothes, same routine. Every Sunday for months. The camera caught everything. The hugs, the talking, the way she looked at him like I never existed. It was mechanical, routine, planned. Then I noticed something else. Sometimes she'd adjust the camera before he arrived. She knew it was there. She had placed it. She'd been recording those meetings herself. That realization hit harder than anything else. She wasn't being watched. She was doing the watching. She had set up the camera, pressed record, and lived out her second life in the same house she shared with me. I sat there for hours, staring at the screen, clicking through every file one by one. Each video stripped away another piece of the life I thought I had. I felt numb, not angry yet, just empty. Like my whole marriage had been a long performance, and I was the only one who didn't know my role. When I finally closed the laptop, the house was silent. The sunlight had faded, and the clock on the wall read 7:45 p.m. She'd be home soon. I heard the garage door open minutes later. My hands were still trembling, but I wiped the screen clean, took the memory card out, and hid it under a loose floorboard in my office. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I didn't trust what I might say or do. She came in like nothing had happened. She cooked dinner, asked about the game, smiled as she set the table. I answered quietly, pretending to be tired. Inside, my mind was racing. Every laugh, every word, every look from her felt fake now. The truth sat just a few feet away, hidden in a memory card. That night, as she slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The woman who shared my bed was a stranger, and the house that once felt safe now felt contaminated. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. The next morning, I was going to end it, but not with shouting. I was going to end it with proof. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I didn't sleep at all that night. My body felt heavy, but my mind was sharp. The memory card burned in my thoughts like a weight I couldn't set down. I got out of bed quietly, careful not to wake her, and went straight to my office. I turned on the laptop again, inserted the card, and pressed play on another file. The screen lit up in the dark room, showing that same guest room, that same bed, and that same lie that had lived above my head for months. At first, I thought I'd seen everything the night before, but I hadn't. This time, I watched longer. I noticed details I missed the first time. How she always checked her reflection in the mirror before opening the door, how she looked at the camera once before hitting record, how she moved around the room like it was muscle memory. Everything was deliberate. Every step, every gesture. It wasn't something spontaneous. It was planned, organized, repeated. In one video, I saw her checking her phone, smiling at a message, then tucking it under the pillow before he arrived. A few minutes later, the man, the deputy, walked in again. Same confidence, same routine. He took off his hat, laughed, and sat on the bed like he owned the place. I recognized every movement because I'd seen it before, not in him, but in myself. The same comfort, the same trust. Only now, I was watching another man live inside my life. I skipped through several clips, each worse than the one before. They never once looked worried, never acted like they were doing something wrong. That part hit hardest. There was no hesitation, no guilt, just comfort, familiarity. Like this wasn't an affair. It was a second life she'd been living behind the same walls as me. Every Sunday at 10, she disappeared upstairs to clean, but really she was scrubbing away her conscience. Then I found one video different from the rest. It was dated a week earlier. In this one, they argued. I couldn't hear them, but their body language told me everything. She was pacing, waving her hands, while he sat on the edge of the bed rubbing his face. He looked nervous. She looked angry. Then she pointed toward the camera, toward the exact spot I was watching from. He froze, stood up, and said something, but she didn't stop. She unplugged the camera, looked straight into the lens, and mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then the recording ended abruptly. That single clip made my stomach turn. She wasn't unaware of the camera. She used it. Maybe to threaten him. Maybe to protect herself. I didn't know yet. But she wasn't the victim. She was in control. She had planned every inch of this. The thought made me sick. I realized then that I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with someone who was calculating. Someone who'd built an entire system of lies right under my nose and filmed it for her own reasons. I sat there for hours, watching, rewinding, deleting, then restoring files, trying to understand how deep it went. There were months of footage, dates going back almost a full year. I stopped counting after 27 videos. My hands were numb, my throat dry. I had proof of everything, and yet I didn't feel relief. Just emptiness. You think finding the truth will help you move on, but it doesn't. It just kills the part of you that believed in the lie. Around 9 a.m., she came into the office doorway with a cup of coffee, smiling like nothing had happened. I minimized the window before she could see. She asked what I was working on, and I said bills. She kissed me on the head and left. I waited until I heard the vacuum start upstairs again. The same hum, the same false sound of order. I took out my phone. opened a new email, and attached 3 of the clearest video files. The ones that showed everything. I typed in the address of the county sheriff's department and hit send. By noon, the entire department knew. I didn't stop there. I printed copies of the files and mailed them directly to the sheriff's office. No note, no message, just evidence. Cold, factual, undeniable. That evening, she came home later than usual. Her face was pale. She didn't say a word during dinner. Her hands shook when she reached for her glass. I didn't ask why. I just ate in silence, every bite heavy with satisfaction and sorrow. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to accuse. The truth was already doing the work for me. The next morning, the news broke quietly. Local deputy resigns amid internal investigation. No one said why, but I didn't need to hear it. I already knew, and so did she. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not even for a minute. The house was too quiet, but my thoughts were loud. Every sound made me alert. The refrigerator hum, the creak of the floorboards, the clock ticking slower than usual. She was in bed next to me, sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady, her body turned slightly away. I stared at the ceiling and thought about every Sunday, every lie, every smile she'd given me after her so-called cleaning routine. It's strange how your mind replays old memories once you know the truth. Every laugh, every hug, every "I'll be right back" suddenly looks different when you realize it was all staged. I turned over to look at her. She looked calm. Too calm. I wondered if she knew what I'd done earlier that day. Maybe she sensed it. Maybe she didn't. Either way, it didn't matter now. The damage was already done. Somewhere across town, the man she'd been meeting was probably sitting in his kitchen with his head in his hands, realizing his career was over. I should have felt satisfaction, but I didn't. All I felt was emptiness. The kind that doesn't go away with revenge. The clock hit midnight. She shifted slightly in her sleep, murmured something, and turned toward me. For a moment, I saw her the way I used to. The woman I thought I knew. I thought about the early years of our marriage, how we used to argue about small things like what movie to rent or what to cook for dinner. We never had big fights, never screamed at each other. We were quiet people. Maybe that was the problem. Quiet marriages die slowly, one silent betrayal at a time. At one point, I got up and went downstairs. I made coffee I didn't need and sat at the kitchen table staring at the laptop. The videos were still there, waiting. I opened one again, not because I needed to, because I couldn't stop myself. I wanted to be sure it was real, but the more I watched, the less it felt like my life. It looked like 2 strangers in a room that happened to be inside my house. The betrayal was so clean, so practiced, that it almost looked rehearsed. That's what haunted me most, how natural it all seemed. The night stretched on forever. Around 2 a.m., I heard her get out of bed. Her footsteps came down the hallway. I closed the laptop quickly and turned off the kitchen light. She walked into the room, rubbing her eyes, pretending to look for water. She asked why I was up, and I said I couldn't sleep. She smiled gently and said I should come back to bed. Her tone was soft, caring, like nothing had changed. That's when it hit me. She still thought she was in control. She had no idea her secret was already gone, exposed, shattered. I followed her upstairs, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to see how she'd act now that I knew. She fell back asleep quickly. I didn't. I lay awake listening to her breathing. The same rhythm that once comforted me now sounded hollow. I looked at the ceiling until the first light of morning crept through the curtains. Every minute of that night felt like a test, not of love, but of restraint. I could have confronted her right then, thrown the truth in her face, but I didn't. I wanted her to find out the way I found out, quietly, suddenly, without warning. At 6 a.m., she woke up, stretched, and went about her normal routine. Coffee, shower, makeup. She didn't notice my eyes following her every move. She didn't sense the tension, the way my silence had changed. She was humming, the same tune she always hummed before cleaning. I sat at the table, watching her pack her purse, watching the same woman who'd betrayed me move through the house as if nothing had happened. When she left for work, I didn't stop her. I didn't say a word. But as soon as the door shut behind her, I felt something inside me go still. Not relief, not rage, just clarity. The storm was over. The truth was already in motion, and there was no turning back. That night had been long, but it had also been the last one I'd ever spend with her under the same roof. When morning came, I was ready. The sun rose slow and bright, but it didn't feel like any other day. It felt like the start of something final. She moved through her routine the same way she always did. Coffee brewing, toast popping, phone in hand. She looked at me once across the table and smiled, completely unaware that her entire world was already falling apart. The sheriff's department had received the videos hours earlier. I knew it because one of my old friends from town had texted me just after sunrise. They're talking about it. That was all he wrote, and that was all I needed to know. By the time she finished breakfast, the phone rang. She didn't answer it right away. The sound of the ringtone made her freeze mid-step. It kept ringing, louder each time. When she finally picked up, her voice changed. Calm at first, then strained. She said, "Okay," 3 times, then hung up without looking at me. Her hands trembled when she set the phone down. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't have to. She walked out of the kitchen and sat on the couch, quiet. For the first time, I saw the mask slip. She wasn't humming. She wasn't smiling. Her eyes were empty, staring at nothing. I could see the truth sinking in. She knew. She must have realized what had happened, how quickly things had spread, how one small memory card had burned her entire lie to the ground. At 9 a.m., another call came. She didn't pick up that one either. I did. It was a voice I recognized, the sheriff himself. He spoke carefully, his tone professional. He said the department had received evidence of personal misconduct and that an internal review was underway. He didn't ask questions about how I got the footage, and I didn't volunteer information. He just said, "We're handling it." I thanked him and hung up. When I looked at her, she was crying silently, not saying a word. No yelling, no excuses, just quiet tears. That was when I realized it was over. Not just the affair, but the marriage. There's no coming back from something like that. Once trust dies, everything else goes with it. She packed her things that afternoon. No screaming, no begging, no arguments. She didn't try to deny it. Maybe she knew there was no point. I sat in the same chair where I had found the camera days before and watched her walk up and down the stairs, filling one suitcase after another. Every trip she took felt like a piece of history being erased. The sound of zippers, hangers, and footsteps became the soundtrack of our ending. Around 3 p.m., she stopped at the door. She turned around, maybe to say something, maybe to explain, but she didn't. She just looked at me for a long moment, her eyes red, her lips trembling. Then she opened the door, stepped outside, and closed it quietly behind her. No slamming, no final words, just silence. The quiet that followed was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't painful. It was just empty. I sat there for a while, not moving, listening to the refrigerator hum and the clock tick. After 22 years of marriage, the house suddenly felt too large. Every sound echoed. Every room felt hollow. I didn't go after her. I didn't need to. The truth had already done what I never could. It forced her out without a single argument. Later that evening, I took the fake clock, the one that had started it all, and smashed it with a hammer in the driveway. It broke into quiet little pieces, each one reflecting a version of life that no longer existed. That night, I finally slept. Not well, but deeply. For the first time in months, there was no pretending, no guessing, no uneasy silence waiting behind a locked door. The truth was heavy, but it was also clean. Everything false was gone. By the next morning, the whole town knew. Small towns always do. The deputy resigned officially. She left town without saying goodbye to anyone. I didn't hear from her again. What surprised me most wasn't how easily lies fall apart. It was how fast normal returns once they do. The air felt different. The house was quiet, but not haunted. It was mine again. It's been months since she left, but some mornings I still expect to hear her humming upstairs. Habits die slower than people do. The guest room stays locked now. I haven't stepped inside since that day. I repainted the doorframe, replaced the carpet in the hallway, and donated half her clothes to the church thrift store. But the smell of her perfume still lingers faintly in the air. Some things never fully wash out. Still, the house feels cleaner. Not spotless like she kept it, but honest. The silence that used to feel heavy now feels peaceful. It's the kind of quiet you don't realize you missed until it finally returns. I've built a new routine. I wake up early, make my own coffee, and sit on the porch with the newspaper. I talk to the mailman when he walks by, and sometimes the neighbors wave. They don't ask questions, and I don't offer answers. In small towns like ours, everyone knows the story anyway. They just pretend they don't. That's how people show kindness, by not bringing it up. I appreciate that kind of silence. It's the right kind. Every Sunday, I still hear the echo of her old schedule in my head. Around 10 o'clock, I look toward the stairs and imagine her walking up with the vacuum. But the stairs stay empty. I don't turn on the TV anymore during that time. Instead, I take a drive, sometimes to the lake, sometimes to the diner near Main Street. I sit in the same booth, order black coffee and eggs, and watch the world move on. The waitress knows my order now. She doesn't ask if I want company. She just smiles and keeps the coffee hot. For a while I kept thinking about the man, the deputy. I saw him once at the grocery store before he left town. He looked smaller somehow, like the truth had taken something from him too. He didn't see me, or maybe he pretended not to. I didn't care either way. What was done was done. His career ended quietly. Hers ended with a packed car and a one-way road out of Kansas. Justice didn't need noise, it just needed to happen. I've learned something since all of this. When betrayal hits, people think the pain comes from the act itself. It doesn't. The real pain comes from the time, the years you spent believing a lie. The breakfasts, the inside jokes, the shared routines, all of it becomes evidence of how easily trust can be faked. But I also learned something else. Once you stop trying to make sense of it, peace arrives quietly. Not the kind of peace that forgives, but the kind that accepts. Sometimes I wonder if she ever regrets it. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. I'll never know, and that's fine. Closure doesn't come from apologies. It comes from knowing you saw the truth and walked away from it. I don't hate her anymore. I don't think about what she's doing or who she's with. I just think about what I've learned. That no one really hides who they are forever. Lies may be polished, but they always leave fingerprints. I've started taking care of the house myself now. The lawns trimmed, the gutters cleaned, the guest room door sealed shut. I thought about turning it into an office, but something in me won't open that door again. It's not fear, it's principle. Some spaces deserve to stay closed. Life is quieter now, but it's also lighter. I buy my own groceries, I pay the bills on time, I fix what breaks. There's a strange kind of pride in doing things alone, not because I wanted to, but because I can. I've stopped checking my phone for messages that never come. I've stopped replaying old memories that never meant what I thought they did. Every day feels cleaner than the last. When I walk through the house now, I sometimes stop by that hallway. The light hits the door just right, and for a second, I see my reflection in the knob. Just me. No lies. No pretending. Just a man standing in his own truth. The house may be empty, but it's finally honest. Every Sunday she said she was cleaning the guest room. I never questioned it. I thought that was just marriage. Two people living quietly, trusting each other, not asking too much. But what I learned is that silence can hide anything. Behind closed doors, behind soft voices, behind a smile, there can be secrets growing like mold under paint. It took one small red light on a fake clock to show me how much of my life was built on lies. The camera didn't just record her actions, it recorded the moment my trust died. After she left, I tried to figure out when it all started. I looked back at old photos, vacations, birthdays, anniversaries. Somewhere in between, The woman I loved turned into someone I didn't know. Maybe it wasn't sudden. Maybe it was small choices, one after another, excuses, secrets, half-truths. You don't notice it while it's happening because betrayal doesn't scream. It whispers. And by the time you hear it clearly, it's already too late. Sometimes I walk past the guest room door and stop. I stand there and stare at it, remembering how many times I ignored the signs. The locked door, the perfume that didn't belong to any day I could recall, the way she guarded her phone, the way she smiled after every cleaning. I wasn't blind. I was just loyal to an image that didn't exist anymore. And that's what hurts the most. Not the betrayal itself, but realizing how long I protected the lie that betrayed me. I've learned that when the truth finally arrives, it doesn't heal you instantly. It breaks you first. It tears apart the version of reality you built and forces you to rebuild from scratch. But once you start again, every step forward feels lighter. There's no pretending, no paranoia, no guessing what's behind the door. Just peace. Simple, unpolished, quiet peace. I don't hate her. I don't think hate helps anyone. I just don't understand why people risk everything for something that never lasts. The man she met lost his job. She lost her home, her reputation, her comfort. And for what? A few hours in a guest room and a secret that couldn't survive a blinking red light. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening, it's this. Trust your gut. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Don't let love blind you into silence. Ask questions. Pay attention. The truth doesn't destroy relationships. Lies do. Now, when people ask how I'm doing, I say I'm fine. And for the first time, I mean it. I don't need revenge. I don't need closure. I already got both when she walked out and the door stayed shut behind her. The truth has a strange way of cleaning up what we can't. It removes the people who don't belong in your story anymore. The guest room is still there. Clean, empty, quiet. I don't use it for guests. I don't change anything about it. I let it stand as a reminder, not of her, but of what I learned. That even the safest rooms can hide danger. That even love can turn into a lie when no one's watching. Every Sunday now, I go for a drive instead of sitting in that house. I pass the church, the grocery store, the diner where everyone knows my name. Life goes on, and I've stopped asking why it happened. Some answers don't matter anymore. What matters is that I survived it, and I didn't lose myself in the process. Every marriage starts with a promise, to stay honest, to stay loyal, to stay true. But promises mean nothing without proof. And sometimes, proof comes in the form of a hidden camera, blinking in the dark, waiting to be found. Every lie has an expiration date. Hers ended on a Sunday.